Welcome back, Eagle Eyes on Tech. I'm Eagle Falcon. All right, so the AMD Radeon RX 9060 XT is out, and I'm not gonna lie, I'm really annoyed by one thing. I mentioned this before too. The biggest thing I am annoyed with when it comes to this specific card, because the RX 9600, or the RX 9060 XT is actually two cards, because AMD went ahead and copied the exact same sort of marketing BS that NVIDIA did. So if you don't know, NVIDIA, when they released the RTX 4060 Ti, they had two different versions of it. One with 16 gigabytes of RAM and another with 8 gigabytes of RAM. The 8 gigabytes of RAM has a much more attractive price point, of course, but the thing is that because it only has 8 gigabytes of RAM, it can't keep up, and it actually horribly limits the card. To make matters even worse, when review samples of the RTX 5060 Ti came out, NVIDIA only sent out copies of the 16 gigabyte card, but then sold both the 16 gigabyte and the 8 gigabyte variants on the shelf, thus potentially leading to the confusion, I would almost say complete deception, that you're going to get the 16 gigabyte performance out of the 8 gigabyte card, because you just go ahead and just pick up the 8 gigabyte one because it's cheaper, only to find out that your performance is heavily limited. Lo and behold, AMD did the exact same thing. The 9060 XT has both a 16 gigabyte and an 8 gigabyte variant. There's a $50 difference between the two, and the reviewers never got an 8 gigabyte variant. And I'll be blunt, for the price, AMD is definitely your better performance per dollar. You're better off with the AMD card for sure, but holy smokes, man. Is this going to be what our duopoly of GPUs is going to be? Someone in chat says the only reason you will buy new GPUs is more VRAM for LLMs. The more RAM for LLMs is important, but the problem is that if you're running 1440p gaming now, which is the new standard, I'm still a pleb on 1080 because I'm a pleb, you run out of RAM very quickly, and then the card has to tap into system RAM, which then makes the card operate much slower. So the VRAM actually does play a bigger role than just, oh, well, more RAM, more better for AI. True, but you do need to have enough VRAM on your card in order to game properly. Just like for an actual computer system, if you don't have enough RAM, you're going to run into a massive bottleneck as the computer now starts using your hard drive or solid state drive for RAM because you ran out. More RAM does not necessarily mean better performance, but not enough RAM will definitely lead to a massive drop in performance. And that's what you're seeing with the AMD Radeon cards. The few reviews of the 8 gigabyte variant out there, because some reviewers went ahead and said, that no, this is stupid. You should absolutely have the 6 gigabyte and 8 gigabyte variant. I don't think a Discord someone managed to find that my Discord did not enter streamer mode correctly. I don't know if the Discord sound effect went through on the stream or the podcast. I don't think it did, but if it did, I apologize. That has now been fixed. But yeah, no, these new cards just suffer immediately on only 8 gigabytes of VRAM. Someone else in chat says game of choice is Minecraft and you're good with 1440p on an old card. That's great. But when we're talking about brand new cards running brand new games, no, it throttles almost immediately on 8 gigabytes of RAM. Each person's use case might be different, but that's right now like the tested truth of the matter. It's kind of like saying, oh, back in the day I was fine on 4 gigs of RAM. Now you're not. Now you're not even good on 8 gigs of RAM. Like 16 gig is your bare minimum now on your standard PC. You really are looking for close to that 16 or 32 gigabytes of RAM on your PC, or if you're an insane person, 64 gigabytes, which I'm pretty sure is what I have on this computer. I mean, I just look at the state of GPUs right now, and I am just sick and tired of the actual intentional deception. Because this isn't by accident. NVIDIA could have very easily had turned the 4060 Ti into the 4060 Ti and the 4060, period. I'm sorry, 5060. And then easily had made the current 4060 into the 4050 Ti. Very easily could have done that. And in the case of AMD, you're not using most of your numbers anyway. You could have easily had this had been the 9060 XT and the 9060 period. That could have very easily eliminated the confusion. And before anyone says it, that I am a believer in the philosophy of Heron's razor, that never assume malice, that which can be equally explained by incompetence. I ask you, how could this be equally explained by incompetence? There is far too much benefit for this deception to exist, for this to have been an oversight or someone making a mistake. This is not a case of incompetence. This is a case of intentionally trying to create confusion and then benefit from said confusion. And I'm sick of it. This should not be acceptable. The fact that this is even legal in having a massive difference between two products with no clear identifier that they are different does make me wonder again and again and again if there's not a good case for false advertising on here. And I'll admit, I'm not enough of a legal expert to know. The fact that no case has been brought forth does kind of tell me that most likely this does skirt just enough on the line that they can get away with this. But I'm sick of it. I really, really am. And I'll tell you what, Intel cannot get good enough at GPU making fast enough. Zona in chat said they really need to create a good cache system for VRAM, add DDR5 RAM via a socket on the GPU. Man, that would be so nice if we could just add a socketed RAM slot. The problem is right now, there is a clear case of a duopoly. AMD and NVIDIA both have a strong stranglehold on the market. And in case it isn't obvious by what stunt AMD is pulling here with the 9060, there's no motivation for AMD to shake the apple cart too much because they see it as a chance for them to benefit as well. AMD is content being just under NVIDIA and writing all of NVIDIA's malicious thoughts to just maybe making more money. This just shows you right now there is not an original thought in AMD's head. They put strict guidelines on what board partners can do with their cards, just like NVIDIA. They're keeping a strong control over what their cards can do, just like NVIDIA. They're making sure that the RAM amount has to match exactly the BS they're pushing out, just like NVIDIA. The only one that is willing to shake the cart right now is Intel. And that's because they're so new to the GPU space that they're willing to do anything to get some market share. This should be a wake-up call that AMD is not the company to go to bring NVIDIA out of their monopolistic behavior. By the way, there's a conversation in the chat regarding the speed of the RAM. DDR5 actually is too slow for GPUs. That much is true. However, there are RAM modules called CAMs. If you make a GDDR version of that with its bandwidth and speed, you could totally do a modular RAM swap version of a GPU card. It should theoretically be possible to get your GDDR6 or GDDR7 speeds or whatever the heck we're actually up to now using the CAMs layout, theoretically. So like it is doable. Good luck finding a GPU maker that's willing to do that because there's way too much of a benefit for AMD and NVIDIA to control exactly how much RAM is on each card. Especially since, data centers will just go, well, why would I go ahead and buy the AI GPU for $10,000 when I could buy a 5090 and swap out the RAM module there to match the $10,000 GPU at 10% of the price? That's the main reason why, even if there is a physical way to do it, it's not going to happen. That is the unfortunate truth. But it's not just a GPU. It's not just GPUs that also released. The Nintendo Switch is now out. And by the Nintendo Switch, I mean the Nintendo Switch 2. After many leaks, after many mock-ups, after much drama that has come out about the console, it is out. And there were lines lined up everywhere for the console. But here's something I don't think anyone actually expected. There were consoles on shelves. Despite the fact that the pre-orders created the site that it would be impossible to get one on launch day, tons upon tons of people said that, you know, there were a bunch of Switch 2s still on the shelves that you could just buy on launch day without a pre-order. Which means there's one of two ways you can take this. Either A, Nintendo actually successfully ramped up production enough to meet demand, or B, the demand of this console was heavily overestimated. And there were just that many pre-orders that canceled. And I'm not going to lie, there's no way we're ever going to know for sure. It could very well be either or. It could be some combination of the two. Who knows? Here's what people are finding out, though. One, the weird slots or little PCB boards on the sides of the console do have some give to them. So if you don't know, on the Switch 2, I do not have a Switch 2. I have a Switch 1 right here. Okay. A Switch 1 does not have these, but on the sides, there are connectors that slot into the Switch 2 Joy-Cons, and that is the actual data connector. The Switch 1 actually doesn't have these. It just connects via, I guess, wirelessly somehow to its attached controllers. Most people predicted that these connectors are going to break off at some point. That this is going to be a major failure point of the console. It has been revealed there is actually, by design, some give to these connectors. And in fact, some early testers, specifically the one I saw was Jerry Rig Everything, tried to go ahead and bend the ever-loving crap out of their Switch 2, which, by the way, hurt to watch, as someone who wants a Switch 2 and doesn't have one, to watch them try to bend the Switch 2 in half for the connectors to pop off or the Joy-Cons to pop off, but the connectors still remain completely intact. So right now, early testing, granted, we're still in week 0 of this launch. Early testing shows that our fears of these connectors being major failure points really does appear to be unjustified at this time. There's a decent chance these will last a pretty long time. There is also early reports saying that Nintendo does say they will replace Joy-Cons in the case of if stick drift turns out to be a thing on the Switch 2. Someone in chat asked they thought the Switch 2 was a handheld console. It is. Just like the Switch 1, the Switch 2 is a handheld console that can go into a dock to become a living room console. So it is portable. It is bigger than the Switch 1. Like, I can hold my Switch 1 in one hand pretty comfortably. The Switch 2, from what I understand in its size, might be a bit difficult for me to hold in one hand, like I'm holding the Switch 1 like a cell phone. Might be a bit too wide for that. But I'd say the size of the Switch 2 is pretty close to a Steam Deck. So, you know, about yay big if you're watching the video version of this podcast. If you're not watching the video version of this podcast, oh well, I guess. But so far, everything seems to be pretty positive about the Switch 2. In fact, the only negative I've seen about the Switch 2 is the battery life. Some people are reporting only 2 hours of battery life on basically the only game available for the Switch 2 right now, that being Mario Kart World Tour. Well, we knew the battery life of the Switch 2 was going to be a hit compared to later versions of the Switch 1. But from what people are saying, though, this is actually even worse than what the Switch 1 launched with. Not by much, but it's pretty close to being that bad. The battery life was, in fact, overestimated on the Switch 2. Which might mean that if you're using a Switch 2 on the go, you may have to consider keeping a portable battery charger with you. And that portable battery has, USB-C power delivery built into it. That's just, unfortunately, it is what it is. So, I guess at this point, you have to kind of debate. Do you want to go ahead and get a Switch 2? I mean, granted, the fact that people say they found it on shelves means that scalpers probably aren't doing too well. Let's actually quickly go to eBay and see how well Switch 2 units are selling for. Well, people are still trying to scalp them, just not for as much as you would have thought. About $700, $750, $750, $630. The console, by the way, normally is $450 new, $500 with Mario Kart World bundled in it. Somebody here is trying to sell it for $1,100. Folks, I'll just tell you this right now. Don't bother buying it on eBay. You can wait. I believe in you. Especially since right now, the Switch 2 does not have that many games. Yeah, right now I'm looking at Target. Apparently Target is completely out of stock of the Switch 2 online. So launch day, it might have been possible to get some. It looks like that may not be the case now. So scalpers will be able to go ahead and make some money to the truly desperate. Just have willpower. Easy. Someone in chat says, to be fair, planes these days have USB charge ports. Yeah. And fortunately, the Switch 2 does have a USB port both on the bottom of the console and the top. That top USB console USB port is for charging, and that's probably gonna be your more desired way to charge the blasted thing while you're using it. So huzzah, some thought was put into that. Someone in chat points out someone thought that through. Thank you, Steam Deck, for having a USB port on the top. Does the Steam Deck have one on the bottom? Nope. Just the top. I actually need to charge my Steam Deck. It has been dead for a couple of days. I'm a monster who has let my Steam Deck just be dead. Someone in chat says the Asus one is the one that did that. I think all of the Steam Deck competitors actually, I think it might have been Asus first. I can't remember who had the first Steam Deck clone. I can't remember if it was Asus or Lenovo or like one of the other like notorious handheld builders that I'm like blanking on it. But it doesn't matter. Like the moment that someone did that had the two USB-C ports, one on the top, one on the bottom, yeah, everyone else started doing that. There are some early reports though that the Switch 2 will only let you hoard up to 30,000 screenshots. Oh no. Anyway. How unacceptable. Only 30,000 screenshots. Apparently the original Switch also had a limitation of only 10,000 screenshots. I mean, let's be honest though, if you took a screenshot you really used, guess what? It didn't stay on your Switch very long. You posted it to Twitter. So I mean, you might as well just say whatever. There's a limit, I guess. Whatever. In other news as well, Fortnite is confirmed to be coming to the Switch 2, and it will support the in-game game chat if you want to hate your ears, as well as the built-in mouse control. For those who don't know, the Joy-Con of the Switch 2, you can put a bumper on it and use it as the world's thinnest and second worst mouse in existence. Yeah, I said second worst. You know the Apple Magic Mouse is a worse mouse than the Joy-Con. You know it's worse. People are saying the Switch Joy-Con is the worst one. I disagree. But fortunately, the Switch does support other mice. So you can, in fact, use theoretically, you could use a Bluetooth mouse, But you should also just be able to hook up a USB mouse to the dock and use that as well, which is infinitely better. It's confirmed that Fortnite will support the mouse functions on it. Someone in chat says it'll allegedly support a keyboard. I don't know that for certain, but if it does, I mean, now I just want to see the PC gaming setup that is just a Switch 2. But then the rest of the rig is just massive screens and a gaming keyboard and mouse hooked up to the Switch 2. Someone's gonna, if it's true that it does support keyboard as well as mouse, someone's gonna do it. You know someone's gonna do it. That would be insane. But yeah, I mean, so far things are actually looking pretty decent for the Switch 2. Now there is one weirdness of the Switch 2, and that has to do with its screen. Someone in chat asked how many screens does the Switch 2 support. 1. Sorry. The Switch 2 is still a game console. They're only going to go ahead and build it to support 1. That being said, nothing is stopping you from using a HDMI splitter and having the exact same screen spread out to 6 different monitors on your Switch 2 battle station to give the illusion that you're using multiple monitors on a Switch 2. But in any case, about the Switch 2 screen, there is something a bit odd about it. So for those who don't know, the original Switch had a plastic screen. Okay? The Switch OLED, the one I have right here, does have a glass screen. It is a capacitive glass screen. The Switch 2 also has a glass screen, but there is a catch, because Nintendo put a very strange permanent screen protector on the Switch 2. So you have a screen protector that is tightly fit to the screen that Nintendo has openly said users are strongly not recommended not to peel off the film protector. So effectively, you will have a plastic screen, but I guess a super fragile glass one under it? It's kind of weird. So does that mean that since the screen protector is on there, then we shouldn't remove it, that it's meant to be permanent? Do we need a screen protector for the screen protector? I don't know. It's not like it's a big minus, because people were going, oh my God, $450 and it's a plastic screen. Oh my God. And there's been a lot of people who have been saying exactly that they can't believe in 2025 there is a portable console with a plastic screen. It doesn't have a plastic screen. It is a glass screen, but it has a plastic clear protector that is supposed to be permanent on top of the glass, which most likely means that it is a very fragile piece of glass. So before you go out and say, oh my, I can't believe you paid $450 for a plastic screen. No, you didn't. No, they didn't. Also, by the by, a lot of people are talking about this in the chat too. I didn't actually have an article for this, but there have been a lot of reports about GameStop and a few saying that Best Buy and Target did this as well. That for pre-orders in a haste, they just stapled the pre-order receipt or who has what Switch claimed directly to the box, which not an uncommon practice. I've seen that before in retail outlets because staple is faster than tape. And when you're doing a massive number of pre-orders, it's fast to go receipt, chunk, receipt, chunk, receipt, chunk, receipt, chunk. That's not uncommon. What's unfortunate, though, is that because Nintendo copied Apple's method of unboxing, and everyone has copied this now, Apple was great at one thing: making the unboxing experience feel amazing, which has in fact now made the console very close to the top of the box, so that when you open the box, the first thing you see is the beautiful brand new Switch 2. that's supposed to give that wow feeling. If you can do simple math, you know where this is going. The wow factor people got is that their screen shattered because now it looks like a vampire bit their screen. Whoops. Yeah, it's unfortunate. It does sound like, from what I've heard, I don't have confirmation of it, but I have heard that the parties affected by this are being compensated for the retail outlet's blunder, and everything should be fine. That might be why all the Switches are now out of stock, because all the extras had to go to people who look like their Switch 2s have been bitten by a vampire. A very tiny vampire, which actually sounds kind of cute, I'm not going to lie. We still do have actually a little bit more of the Switch news out there. And this actually has to go with this is actually one of the other big, this is probably, I would say probably the biggest problem with the Switch 2 at this exact moment. It is the fact there are not that many new games for the Switch 2. Right now, it is basically Mario Kart World Tour, or is it just Mario Kart World? I forgot which one. And Deltarune. That's about it. There aren't that many games to it. And it turns out people are discovering to unlock and do everything in Mario Kart World, it apparently only takes 10 hours. That's what people are finding out right now, is that it doesn't take long for this massive Mario Kart game to just have everything beaten. Now, of course, your mileage is gonna vary. This most likely is someone who went out there with the expressed goal of trying to go and beat everything as fast as they possibly could. So, I mean, before we go ahead and jump on the headline, it only takes 10 hours to beat Mario Kart. Oh my God. That's like going and looking at a speed run of Final Fantasy VII, seeing that it's only a couple of hours, and go, man, that RPG is short. It only takes a couple hours to beat. No. Bad. That is not how time works. There is a strong difference between diving into a game to beat it as quickly as possible and find all the unlocks as quickly as possible, and sitting down and enjoying your time with the game. Grant, I'm not saying this guy went into Mario Kart World with a completely optimized plan like you would have for an RPG speedrun. I'm just saying there's a difference. But the point still does stand. There are basically only a handful of brand new games for the Switch 2. There's just Mario Kart World, there's Deltarune, and then there's Pokemon Scarlet and Violet that actually work this time. That's pretty much it. Someone in chat points out, man, those early Pokemon games are such minimal games. You could beat it in a matter of seconds. Otherwise, like all the other games out there for the Switch 2 are just Switch 1 games that got Switch 2 patches, which for the most part, the Switch 2 patches are very minor. I would argue the biggest upgrade for Switch 2 patches, hands down, goes to Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, that now actually have the games being actually playable at a decent frame rate with stability. I'd say that is easily by far the biggest Switch 2 patch upgrade. Everyone else, yeah, okay, a little bit of upgrade. Yeah, okay, Breath of the Wild runs better. Yeah, okay, yeah, that Zelda runs better. Yeah, whatever. Someone in chat said the game's now finally out of early access. One of the key points in humor is that something is extra funny when the joke itself has a good amount of truth built into it. So yeah, I mean, that's one of the main reasons why I'm comfortable waiting for my Switch 2. But some people might actually want to get ahead and get their Switch 2 right now just because it's already been cracked. There is already a Switch 2 hack out there to get base root access. This was one of the things leading up to the Switch 2 earlier this week that was a big fear, that this console was going to be heavily unhackable, that the new things in the EULA, talking about Nintendo reserving the right to remotely brick your console if you try to hack it, that this console would be impossible to root. This would be impossible to gain access to. Day one, done. Never, ever, ever underestimate the hacker space, because all saying that your console is unhackable does, your platform is unhackable, there's no way in, it makes the hacker space just go, yeah, wanna bet? and then try that much harder. And 9 times out of 10, they succeed. And as someone did point out in the chat, this is not kernel access or anything like that. It is only access to the user space, but the door is open. They got it in. It's only a matter of time until the rest crumbles with it. We're going to take a break here. When we come back, we got more to talk about, including a very interesting NVIDIA scam going on right now, as well as the state of streaming. Don't go anywhere. We'll be back. Welcome back, Eagle Eyes on Tech. I'm Eagle Falcon. We have a very concerning report that, I mean, the issue has most likely been resolved by now, because it's been a bit. This is almost an old story. But there's been reports over at Micro Center that over $90,000 worth of RTX 5090 GPUs have been replaced by backpacks. And these were replaced by still sealed in the box packaging. So the swap happened at the factory for this sort of thing, most likely. Someone in chat said, oh, so there are only 10 cases of this. No. So far, there's only been 32 cases. But still kind of a concerning thing that this happened. And, you know, if you went ahead and had this, that you got a package that maybe seemed a little off, trying to gift a friend or family member a 5090, you know, there is actually a decent chance that you might have also been a victim of this scam. Micro Center is doing replacements of these units, obviously. Micro Center is saying they had no idea that this sort of thing did occur. So if you are a victim of this, just return it to, you know, to your local Micro Center and have it swapped out. Easiest thing to do. But if you want to talk about other scams out there, here's something that's actually kind of a little scary. I'd like to introduce you to the Crocodilus malware, a piece of malware that infects Android phones that adds fake contacts. The malware goes ahead and, of course, does your standard phone malware stuff, scans your phone, submits data to the attacker, does all that other fun stuff. But the main concerning thing that this thing does is that it adds fake contacts so that, say, if an attacker is trying to go and impersonate your bank, they can use the malware to add a contact to your phone using the attacker's spoofed phone number and therefore make it look like on your phone that in fact your bank is calling you. So now instead of getting a suspicious number from 702-696969420 or whatever, now it shows up as Chase Bank. Instead of potentially coming up as scam likely, now it comes up as US Bank. And to someone not as on the up and up on these sort of scams, not for someone that is not like hyper aware that these sort of scams exist, that is insidious. That is actually really, really, really clever. So in this case, you got to come up with other ways to counter this sort of stuff. Always with the bank, what I always strongly recommend is try to get the alleged banker trying to tell you about an issue. Try to get them to answer questions about you and see if they stumble. But honestly, one of the biggest things, set up online banking. Check on a different device than the one you're calling on. Does the issue actually exist? Is there any discrepancies in what they're telling you? And I'm sure more and more people are going to come up with ways to counter this kind of attack, but I'm not gonna lie. This is very clever. This is a very interesting method of attack. It's pretty bloody good. It's a very, very clever one. Not gonna lie. So we'll have to wait and see how long is it gonna take for Android to have an answer to this malware, and how long it's gonna be until a workaround to that patch, to that fix, is invented. In other concerns, Meta and Yandex. If you don't know who Meta is, they're Facebook. They are the artist formerly known as Facebook. Yandex is Russian Google. There's reports saying that both Meta and Yandex are using new protocols that de-anonymize Android users, which then immediately raises privacy concerns. Now, I want to raise a hands for those of you who actually know about the artist formerly known as Facebook and Yandex. Raise your hand if you're surprised by this. Put your hand down. Stop lying. This should surprise literally no one. Meta, of course, being the center of the lizard people that want to know everything for legal purposes. I am kidding about that. And Yandex basically just being a tool of the Russian government that I am not kidding about. They basically are. This should surprise literally no one that they're trying to go ahead and find any way to gather even more information about their users. I'm not surprised. I'm surprised it's taking them this long to find a new way around it. And I guarantee you Google's going to find a new way around that, because Google wants to be the only ones that use your data against you for ads. That is, of course, Google's job. I'm sorry if this shatters your worldview of the innocence of the company known as Google. Someone in chat says just use Firefox. Is Firefox for Android still around? Someone in chat says yes. And apparently they also have uBlock. You know, if it's still being supported and it's still secure, I'd say why not? In other news, OpenAI might be in some trouble because a court order is forcing ChatGPT, OpenAI, to preserve all the data that is used to train ChatGPT in order to prove any kind of plagiarism. All right, so OpenAI is going to appeal this. The appeal is going to be denied. And then OpenAI is found guilty of blatant plagiarism. I have a question. Then what? Someone in chat has the correct answer. The then what is nothing. A small fine and nothing else. I almost guarantee it. Compared to the amount of money that OpenAI brings in for its ChatGPT, it's going to be a few $1 million in damages and a fine of a few thousand, and that's it. You know what that's called? The cost of doing business. And then guess what? They do it again. Because OpenAI learned that, yeah, we can still make a lot more money stealing data and then using that for, you know, generate more AI than anything else. So yeah, the cycle's going to repeat again and again and again. The only way it stops is if serious punishment comes down. And quite frankly, I don't see it happening. I don't. Every time I think AI is going to get major punishment for its blatant plagiarism, they never do. It never happens. So why would it happen this time? Yeah, probably nothing. It would not surprise me at all if, in fact, nothing happens. In other dystopian news, Samsung is teaming up with the company known as Glance in order to create AI-generated lock screen ads. What is the fastest way to make me go back to using a flip phone? I believe that is the Jeopardy answer to this. You know what's even funny? Right now in my area, AT&T is out in force trying to get businesses to switch to AT&T fiber. Their lowest rate, of course, is way higher than what we pay right now for basic internet. And we don't need anything like that. But they tried to go ahead and get me to switch to them for my cell phone. And I currently have a Samsung S23 Ultra. And there's like, oh, we could get you on a Samsung S25 Plus. We could get you on a S25 Ultra. And I thought about it for a second as I'm like trying to find a good way to just get this guy to just leave me alone so I can get back to work. But the thought kind of occurred. What good does upgrading my phone actually do? The processor's still fast. My battery life is still good. Right now, there's a chunk of dead pixels on my phone. Other than fixing that, what good does upgrading my phone actually do? It's literally nothing. In fact, one of the arguments I used when they tried pitching the Plus first is, that's a downgrade. Because the S25 Plus uses a lower end processor than the S25 Ultra, which means I'd lose 2% performance. Oh, but I'd gain AI capabilities. Whoop-de-doo! Someone in chat says you'd get high quality selfies that no one wants to look at. The funny thing is, I think the difference between the cameras between the 23 Ultra and the 25 Ultra is negligible. Like all upgrading a phone does nowadays is introduce more AI bloat. And when you get things like, oh, we're going to use AI to put ads on your lock screen and then tailored for you by using AI scans of your face. You know what? I think I'd rather have the dead pixels. I'd rather have the screen blemish than deal with AI generated lock screen ads. Like, that's actually a compelling argument to go ahead and just keep the screen damage. Ugh. This is the insane world we now live in, where I'd rather have screen damage than deal with a dystopian ad world. Speaking of a dystopian ad world, YouTube Premium Lite will now have more ads on it. So for those who don't know, YouTube has 3 ways you can use it. YouTube, just regular, which has a bunch of ads. YouTube Premium, that is ad-free, and lets you actually use YouTube with the screen off on your Android devices. By the way, the fact that that is a benefit of paying money to YouTube, F off. What a BS feature that is. Ugh. And then there's YouTube Premium Lite, that is cheaper, has some ads, but doesn't give you the feature of turning off your screen and listening to music with the screen off on your phone. YouTube Premium is $16 a month. YouTube Premium Lite is $10 a month. And YouTube Free is worth however much time you spent installing uBlock Origin on your web browser. Let's be honest, you did the free option that involved installing uBlock Origin. You are a wise man or woman. Well, now YouTube Premium Lite is now even less attractive because now you will have ads in your YouTube Shorts feed. Someone in chat says it's still too expensive. Which one? The YouTube Premium Lite, or installing uBlock Origin? Because part of me wants to think that using uBlock Origin was too expensive. That premium is too expensive. That's fair. At least with Premium and Premium Lite, creators, even though you're not seeing any ads, do get a cut of that revenue. Honestly, I still can't believe that one of the benefits of Premium is just listening to music on YouTube. Piss off. Like, that is still just stupid. Ugh. But yeah, if you use YouTube Premium Lite, you're gonna get more ads now. Enjoy that, and then wonder why you did this. I want to talk about the streaming world for a second. So right now, the main streaming world has a number of competitors out there. All right, you have Twitch, YouTube, Kick, Rumble, Trovo, Bigo, Nemo, Soup, and honestly, after that, it's nobody's. One would argue it's just Twitch, YouTube, and Kick. Rumble's not really a competitor. Trovo, despite everyone trying to hype it up to be a competitor, is not a competitor. Bigo's not a competitor. Nemo's not a competitor. Soup's not a competitor. None of the other ones are really a competitor. All right? It's pretty much just those 3. But why are you not including TikTok? Because for whatever reason, the graph I have that shows viewers watching the platform does not have TikTok on it. Most likely because TikTok does not want to give up numbers and just wants to say, we're the best, don't check our math. That really is it. What's bizarre is the trends right now. Twitch right now has a major content moderation problem, and it's starting to really show. YouTube has the problem that they don't care about their live streaming platform. They kind of made it and then ignored it. And it's just kind of clunky to use. And Kick has the problem that they're based on stolen code from Twitch, and they're funded by crypto gambling money. So you got major problems on all three. I want to show you this graph that shows in the last 2 years the number of viewers each of the platforms have and their growth over the last 2 years. YouTube is just kind of all over the place, mostly because people come, they stream, there's a few huge spikes throughout the years as major events happen, and then there's major dips as things just don't work well on YouTube. YouTube's just kind of all over the place. Okay? Let's ignore YouTube for a second, because they're right now the biggest streaming platform out there, but they're mostly because YouTube covers everything. In fact, when you go onto YouTube and look at what their top categories are, it's news and politics. That right there tells you everything you need to know about the wild spikes. Let's look at just Twitch and YouTube. There is a concerning pattern when you look at the two. I'm sorry, I said Twitch and YouTube. Let's look at just Twitch and Kick. Twitch starts in 2023 at 2.5 million viewers, Kick at 86,000. Okay, that's in 2023. You look then in 2024, Twitch is at 2.6 million, Kick is at 151,000. Let's look at 2025. Twitch is at 2.5 million, Kick is at 380,000. But they did have a massive dip actually right at the turn, and we're only at 2.1 million. Bringing us to current day, Twitch is at 2.2 million, Kick is at 500,000 viewers. Over 2 years, Kick has gone from 86,000 to 500,000 average viewers. You combine this with a big movement that is not happy with the current global moderation of Twitch, that some users can get away with slandering other streamers, and you have such major streamers like Asmongold, which you can agree or disagree with the way he runs his show, but he is still one of the biggest streamers, now also co-streaming on Kick, and many others following. You start to see how this growth is happening. This is starting to look like a problem for Twitch, because I've said it again and again and again. If you're not growing, you're shrinking. You start at 2.5 million, you end at 2.2 million. There's not really any growth. And lately, very recently, I would say right in the March area, it starts going from kind of a wild, for like a little variance, to actual real decline. Someone in chat asked, is it real users or just bots? That I don't know. There is also, of course, a stigma that is within Kick, that it is just kind of a more toxic crowd that uses Kick. Nowhere near as bad as Rumble, mind you. But, you know, for a platform that was born out of a source code leak and crypto gambling, it's gaining serious traction. It's not a bell curve growth by any stretch of the imagination, but it is growth. And as someone who does stream on Twitch, I would rather see Twitch go ahead and clean themselves up. Actually go ahead, look at these numbers and say, you know what? Maybe, just maybe, you should do something about actually enforcing your terms of service equally rather than continuing to just let things degrade and decay. Because let me tell you something, putting a rewind button behind a paywall isn't the win you think it is. Doing little things like letting streamers choose when they do extra sub discount events really doesn't feel all that great when there seems to be kind of a favoritism going on. And I know there's plenty of streamers out there that are not too thrilled about the new 1440p upgrade because it takes away control that they had about their bit rate, and also now says, hey, by the way, if you want to maximize your availability on the mobile app, you better go ahead and set up vertical versions of all of your OBS scenes to go with your horizontal ones. And there's plenty of people out there that are just like, I don't want to do that. That sounds terrible. And I don't know any users that want to see that. Maybe I'm wrong about that. Maybe there is a huge user base for them and I just don't know any of them. So good luck with that. I need something to laugh at. Where can I get something to laugh at? Oh, how about I laugh at Instagram? Instagram is having an issue right now with the fact that AI slop now controls the entire board. If you're pondering about growing your streaming career on Instagram, I got bad news. It is now consumed not only by AI porn bots, but now they're invading the safe for work market with AI recipe sharing bots. And here's the best part. Half of them are just completely skimmed and basically plagiarized recipes found online by the AI. And the other half are generated from scratch, totally good recipes. I put totally and good in massive air quotes. Zona Chat says they have still never used Instagram. Good news, you have even less reason to go ahead and use Instagram. Someone else in chat asked about what about fragrant water? As far as I'm aware, there has not been another fragrant water incident. For those who don't know, early AI, there was an issue where one person asked for a party drink and the AI bounced back with fragrant water, which was a recipe to create chlorine gas. Chlorine gas, if you don't know, is extremely toxic. And by extremely toxic, I mean deadly. Should probably emphasize that. Should just make sure you do that. There's no words if there's anything like that on Instagram, but it does mean that when you have bots like this that are just flooding the platform with this kind of slop, it means that the actual human content made stuff has an even less chance of being viewed. You got no chance now. And it just is what it is. Instagram's now just even more unusable. And finally, I bring you the last story of the day, the weirdest story of the week. And I'm not gonna lie, I don't have a super out there last burb story unless I want to get political, because the crash out between Elon and Trump is just absolutely wild. But again, I said I was gonna save that for the subscription episode of the podcast. I'll save it for there. No, instead I have a guy breaking the 3D Mark benchmark record by attaching a tower cooler to a GTX 960. It's just that easy. You want record-breaking performance? Just slap a massive heatsink onto whatever you got lying around. Done. Easy peasy. Now, I'm pretty sure the 3D Mark benchmark record is just meant for an older version, right? Like, it's not like this is not being built for like modern cards. Like I'm pretty sure it's going to be just for this specific card. This is not beating out a 5090. Although I'd laugh my butt off if the overclocker with just a tower heatsink did beat out modern 5090s. That would be poetic. It would make me too happy. But I gotta ask, for general usability, you know that with a lot of modern cards, you need to have a brace for the card to prevent the card from sagging inside the tower. Do you need to go ahead and develop your own special like structure to hold up this card inside the tower? Or are we just going to assume that the heatsink is tall enough that it'll touch the bottom of the case in order to support itself? Now, someone in chat is saying the reason this thing actually did manage to get the benchmark record is because no one ever bothered to make a water block for a 60 series card. And you know, I'd believe that, but now I gotta ask even dumber questions. Like, what if we hook the thing up to a phase change cooler? What if we go ahead and just custom make a new heatsink that just consumes all extra space available to the unit? Because the thing's a passive air cooler, right? You'd have to have another fan blowing air across the heatsink, because otherwise it's only as good as, you know, a block of aluminum, basically. I'm just saying, we can make this stupider. We can't make it better, but we can 100% make this much, much, much stupider. And while part of me does appreciate squeezing as much life as possible out of an older GPU, I am also far more in favor of a stupid idea being made much, much more dumberer. Folks, that is going to do it for this episode of Eagle Eyes on Tech. Thank you so much for listening, and I do encourage you to check out my other works, youtube.com/EagleFalcon and twitch.tv/EagleFalcon, where we do in fact record this podcast. We are now doing subscription episodes of the podcast that include extra stories. You can check that out in the description of this podcast, and I hope you have a great day. Take care. Bye-bye. Now, the real answer at this point is, all right, so we don't want to go ahead and create a normal water block for it, but hear me out. What if we use a tech cooler? You know, one of those ones you put electricity through it and it makes a cold side and a hot side, and then make a water loop for the tech cooler? What if we just straight up attach an entire AC unit to the front of this one GPU? Not for the rest of the computer, no, just the GPU. Or what if we just dismantle the cooling system of a car? Just take a car radiator out and just water loop through that. I'm telling you, the possibilities of being really, really stupid with this one card are endless. We can do it. We can be really, really dumb. Coming up today on Eagle Eyes on Tech, Microsoft says it'll save the USB-C confusion. AMD launches a new card that is pretty decent, but leaves a really bad aftertaste. The Nintendo Switch is out and reviews are pouring in. Kick is seeing a boost in streamers, and YouTube Premium Lite now has more ads. All that and more coming up today on Eagle Eyes on Tech. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, or it's 2 a.m. Good battery, this is Eagle Eyes on Tech. I I'm Eagle Falcon. We got quite a bit to talk about. The Switch is out. The new AMD card is also out. And not only that, but the thier is a buzz with talks about Magic the Gathering cards. I actually did go to the pre-release. I actually did get a few good things. I got this one right here. I got a nice Princess Garnet card. A bunch of other stuff as well. Actually a good time. It's actually a good time. But I don't have a whole lot of news about the MTG stuff. If you want to go ahead and find the MTG stuff, you can find that anywhere. Believe it or not, there is no technology present in a cardboard card based out of the Final Fantasy franchise. I know. I'm just as shocked as you that they haven't turned these into NFTs yet. But I'm sure Wizards would try. A lot has happened this week. We're going to get into all of it. I'm just going to tell you this right now, though. If you're coming here looking for the great drama between Elon Musk and Donald Trump, here I'll go over the very basics right now. We're not going to cover it in the episode. I am going to save it for the paywalled side of the podcast. That's going to be the subscription episode this week. But just to get like a general thing out there, because it's things you should know, the EV mandates are being dropped. That really shouldn't be much of a surprise because the country is not ready for EVs because the infrastructure is not there yet, for starters. But it's also, you know, if you are going to sell EVs, they really do need to stand on their own 2 feet. That's just my personal hot take. Also, Elon is acting like a child. Trump kind of is too, but you know. I will say, watching the drama happen, whew, that was popcorn worthy. That was definitely popcorn worthy. So that'll be the bonus episode. You can find that in the link to this podcast down below. With that said, let's go ahead and get into the topics we're actually going to cover, the ones that are actually somewhat tech related. And we're going to cover the most tech related thing there is: legal proceedings. Obviously. We were covering this before. Apple trying to go ahead and file an injunction against the District of California in their case against Epic Games. For the super short version, Apple basically lost their case against Epic Games and are now going to be forced to allow other payment providers on their platform. They are not allowed to have a monopoly of payment providers on their own platform. And at the same time, the court also said that Apple's behavior was deplorable, and further legal action is being pushed against Apple from the court itself based on the actions done by Apple during the court proceeding. Apple has tried to file a appeal and a stay against the court so that they could go ahead and appeal the decision without having to go ahead and make all these changes. The answer has come in. They were denied. They were straight up told in a ruling of 27-3, basically being told, denied, sit down. I don't know who the 3 were. Are the 3 just like Apple fanboys? Or what? Or were the 3 just like not there? Yeah, no, that went exactly as we expected. So no, there is going to be no new change in the Apple App Store. There are going to be separate payment providers. You can, in fact, link to outside payment providers. That is all going to be going into effect. The stay was denied aggressively. In other Apple rulings, though, Apple is now challenging the unreasonable EU order to open up to rivals. So a very similar case is going on across the pond. And now Apple is now in the process of challenging that as well. This is specifically in regards to having other app stores on the Apple iPhone platform. Now, this would be something that would only happen in the EU if it does successfully happen. But we'll have to wait and see how this ends up going. But it's basically, in the end, just a small little story, because we kind of expected Apple is going to challenge the ruling. Lo and behold, Apple is in fact challenging the ruling. Now, I can already hear it right now. You are sick of hearing about legal news. How about instead we talk about Elon Musk news? No, it's not related to the drama. We're not talking about the drama. We are, however, going to say that we are going to be seeing XChat, a new feature of Twitter, because I refuse to call a platform by a single letter usually associated with pornography. XChat is supposed to replace the MSN, or not the MSN, the Twitter messages, which ends up being nothing but a junk mail box of every single scammer in existence trying to go ahead and get you to either A, commission AI artwork, B, commission stolen artwork, C, buy into a cryptocurrency scam, or D, try to buy into a fake girl's OnlyFans using stolen images. That is all Twitter messages is used for. XChat is going to be more similar to, well, I'd say Facebook Messenger, but I want to go ahead and be even more petty than that. XChat is going to be very similar to AOL Messenger, because messenger services have had very little updates to the front end of things in a long time. That, and I just want to make people just go ahead and feel old by mentioning AOL or MSN Messenger as often as I can, because I'm a prick. But the whole point of this is actually that it's supposed to be very secure. It's supposed to be heavily encrypted. No one's going to see your stuff. It's going to be supposedly using the exact same level of encryption as Bitcoin. And right off the bat, I smell bull pie. If there's one thing I've learned in covering technology, the instant someone tries to sell you on how heavily secure something is, and how heavily private it is, and how safe it is, you know what that means? It means it's not safe at all, and your messages will be used to sell things. It's almost a golden rule on the internet. Never, ever, ever, ever is anything truly private. Any private messages can leak out, whether it's done by one of the recipients of the private message or just by a hack. Things can leak out, and any sort of encryption can be beat eventually. So, I mean, yeah, the security might be decent, but when push comes to shove, I wouldn't use this to, like, go ahead and give private credentials to, like, a loved one or something. I wouldn't use this feature to go ahead and share super private information or anything that's super confidential. I don't think anyone should. But at the same time, I am extremely skeptical of, well, for the most part, any chat service that claims to have maximum security. Because 99 times out of 100, they are nowhere near as good as they say they are. And in Elon Musk's case, 999 times out of 1,000, it turns out he heavily exaggerated everything. It's just what Elon Musk does. I point to the full self-driving car we should have had 10 years ago, the low polygon pickup truck that did not need a frame because it was running on an exoskeleton, so instead it has a constantly stressing aluminum frame, in actuality that can snap eventually with fatigue, the revival of the roadster car that is nowhere to be found and not talked about. That being said, though, there are some small reports out that say that Elon is working, or that Tesla, I should say, is working on a semi-truck with a sleeper cabinet, which, I'm not going to lie, I feel like it should have had from the get-go. What? I'll be blunt. It should have a brake area if you're going to be going ahead and sitting for an hour while it's charging its, 1 megawatt battery or whatever the heck it has? That thing should have had a sleeper from the get-go. I digress. So yeah, XChat is apparently rolling out. I cannot wait to go ahead and get spam messages about hot singles in my area. And then when I ask them what my area is, they'll have no idea. Someone in chat says that XChat is just an IRC client. You know what? I don't know if that's true or not, but I would have no doubt about that whatsoever. But no, seriously, if you ever want to mess with a scammer and they try talking about great offers in your area, just ask them, what is my area? and then watch and be amazed how they struggle to answer what should be a very, very obvious answer, if what they're saying is true. All right, meanwhile, let's actually go into something that really, really, really is tech related, and that being the crisis of USB-C. So what is the crisis of USB-C? Well, I want you to look at any device that has a USB-C port, and I want you to answer, do you know what that USB-C port can do? See, this is especially a problem on tablets and laptops, because USB-C is supposed to just be the Omni port, but depending how USB-C is wired on the inside, it can do only power, it can do only data transfer at the exact pace of the US Postal Service mail, or it could, be pure video out, or a high data transfer, or transfer up to 240 watts of power, or it could also even be 4 lanes of PCI Express data transfer, which is good enough to let a device use an external GPU, and just about everything in between. In the PC world right now, there is almost no universal standard for what USB ports can do. The closest thing we have is having a little Thunderbolt icon right above the USB-C port, meaning that it is a quote-unquote Thunderbolt port or USB 4. Microsoft wants to try and push out the standard for Windows-based laptops that if there is a USB-C port on it, that it has to, at the very minimum, support USB 3.2 speeds, which, by the way, a USB consortium, stop inventing new names. You suck at it. Nobody wants to go ahead and tell their friend, ooh, that laptop has USB 2.2 by 2 revision 3 version 2. Nobody wants to remember what that means. I don't want to remember what that means. And I'm a guy who can go ahead and translate every single freaking Dell model number. I'm a freak in that regards. And even I don't want to remember what the heck all different revisions of USB there is out there. Stick to basic numbers. If Wi-Fi can do it, so can you. Which Wi-Fi are we up to now? Are we up to 8 yet, or are we still on 7? Actually, I think 7 is I think 7 is the latest one that's out, and 8 is currently in early revisions. So yeah, for once, Microsoft, who, by the way, has forced Windows recall on everyone, and you should absolutely disable it if your computer's capable of it, is actually trying to go ahead and bring some sense of sanity to the USB-C market, which, not gonna lie, actually is a good thing. Their goal is to make it so that any USB-C port on a Windows laptop is capable of 3.2 data transfers minimum, video out minimum, and power delivery. That's the goal. So at least then there's no question as to what the USB port can do. So could be a good thing, could be a bad implementation. If there's anything I've learned from Microsoft, anytime they seem to be doing a good thing, you should keep an eye on the good thing they're doing, because they'll find a way to mess it up. Someone in chat says, so USB-C can deplete your laptop battery in mere seconds using the turbocharge protocol. You could, I guess. You could also just not charge a device off your laptop. That is a thought. Although now I'm just imagining someone's travel setup being a plugged-in laptop and a squid of USB-C cables coming off their laptop to charge their phone, watch, Bluetooth headset, and tablet. Honestly, isn't the worst thing in the world. It does make us only have to carry one charger, if you so choose. So that's what's going on in the Microsoft side of things. Meanwhile, though, on the NVIDIA side, there are some rumors. In these rumors, there is an APU coming out soon for early 2026. This is going to be an ARM-powered, what they're calling an APU, but APU is an AMD thing, but it's going to be an what's normally referred to as an SoC, a system on a chip, where it's a GPU and a CPU combined that is capable of decent performance and RTX 4070 performance with a TDP of 65 watts. So this means that the laptop will be capable of RTX 5070 performance and 3070 performance. Yeah, I took my cheap shot. Now, what about it? For the most part, I mean, it is what it is, but I'm not going to expect a whole lot on it because, yeah, you've got GPU performance there, but what games are going to support Windows on ARM? Like, how many out there currently support Windows on ARM? That is always going to be one of the biggest hurdles of ARM laptops for now. It is the support. This sort of stuff is still brand new. For those who don't know, by the way, ARM is an entirely different CPU architecture. Your current laptop most likely runs on what's called x86, same as your desktop. All of your programs are built for that architecture. For them to run on ARM, they need to either A, from the developer, be remade to run on ARM, or B, run on an emulation layer, which means you have performance loss. Now, admittedly, x86 to ARM emulation is not that bad. In a lot of cases, it's actually decent, but it is still going to be a performance hit. And when you don't have a whole lot of performance to begin with, you know, you're kind of in this weird spot. But here's the other thing I also got to wonder. How much is the chip going to cost? I know that's an awkward question to have, right? We've got this problem right now where everything NVIDIA has been touching just costs an actual fortune. None of the current 5000 series NVIDIA cards cost anywhere close to their MSRP, and their MSRP is already way higher than you would pay for a card of that performance. And what's even worse is that now that nobody is buying those NVIDIA GPUs, NVIDIA is doing the smart thing, unfortunately for us, and halting production on these GPUs to keep the supply low. They are not letting the normal forces of supply and demand take hold to let the price drop. From the business standpoint, it's very smart. For the rest of us, it's absolutely abysmal because they're not letting the actual whole point of a free market to take place. So right now, it just looks like, we're just gonna have inflated GPUs forever. What does it mean for this APU, this SoC? Are they gonna keep the price of that crazy high because NVIDIA thinks they deserve it because they have an inflated ego? And then when laptops with that chip don't sell that well, they instead just cut production? I don't want to sound like some kind of NVIDIA hater, but the more and more you see this kind of stuff out of NVIDIA, you just want to just bang your head on a table. It is infuriating. For now, though, all we can do is wait and see. We're going to take our first break here. When we come back, AMD launched 2 brand new GPUs, but there's some problems with them. Don't go anywhere. We will be back.